Hello, I'm Jake Boudreau, civic journalist at Tello Community Television. This week on The Record, the Strait of Canso Superport Corporation receives provincial funding for upgrades. The provincial government announces roads and bridges that will receive improvements. A group of Port Hawkesbury residents talk about their efforts to rebuild the new playground at Tamarac Education Centre. The company proposing a green energy project in Point Tupper achieves a financial milestone, and an organization identifies erosion problems along the Bredor Lake. But first, I spoke to the local Member of Parliament. With me today is the Member of Parliament for Breton-Canso. Welcome back, Mike Kelloway.
Thanks for having me, Jake.
So I noted that on January 8th, you guys, there was a Atlantic Liberal Caucus meeting, and there was also a Federal Liberal Caucus meeting that were held. And maybe if you want to talk about how those meetings went.
Yeah, the meetings went very well. Atlantic Caucus and National Caucus, and the focus was where are we going to go in terms of the leadership race, in terms of length of time, any particular concerns individual members had, they would bring them from the Atlantic Caucus to the National Caucus and the mic, to the mic rather. Prime Minister Trudeau came to the National Caucus and spoke really, really passionately about Canada, really, really passionately over the next couple of months of, in particular, focusing on the American tariffs, the coming American tariffs and the impact that will have on Canada, but also trying to find pathways and opportunities to avoid that. Because tariff war with Canada is also going to impact tremendously so many states within the United States. So two things at play here. One is the Prime Minister couldn't be any more gracious than he was in terms of the need to have a moderate centrist party see us through the next couple of months, which is us, but also the need to select a leader that will go toe to toe with Pierre Poilievre and his vision of Canada, which is clearly right of center, big time. So we discussed many things. A lot of it is confidence because of cabinet confidentiality, but I can say a really, really energetic group, a really robust group in terms of the next chapter, and that group meaning the MPs, and focusing on what is the next chapter for Canada from our perspective as a government, and going into an election potentially in the spring, late spring, or if things work out with another party in the fall. I can tell you an energetic group, a focus group. You can see uh, MPs that are interested in dipping their toe and their full body into the water, leadership water that is. And I talked to some of those folks. I've talked to Chrystia Freeland. I have calls lined up with Mark Carney. I have calls lined up with Christy Clark, former BC Premier, and anybody else that runs. I want to talk to them. I have specific questions related to our region, to my constituents, and I'll be asking those questions. So I haven't decided who I'm going to support until I see a full slate of candidates, and I get to talk to each and every one of them to ask questions that I know my constituents would want me to do so.
Now, while these tariffs are a concern if implemented, many are of the opinion that this is a negotiating tactic, and a typical one that incoming U.S. President Donald Trump has used in the past and continues to use. Do they amount to much? Is it just a lot of noise, or is the specter of these tariffs real?
Well, in my opinion, the Trump Donald Trump has a particular tactic, and it's usually consistent, and it focuses on creating a lot of noise, creating a lot of controversy, taking a lot of digs at whether it's an opponent or a country, and some of it is a way over the top, and the rest of it is really over the top. But what I can say is that, do I think it's a tactic? Yes. Do I think he's serious? Yes. I think if someone tells you something, especially Donald Trump, believe him. He likes to be seen as the strong man, as the great leader. So we have to deal with him. We have to negotiate with them. Now, what gives me optimism is that we have Dominic LeBlanc as the lead negotiator. Dom is quite effective. So my money would be on Dom in protecting Canada's interests and Prime Minister Trudeau. The reality is that the Prime Minister came out this week with a tweet saying, "No chance in hell will become the 51st state." People might say, "Well, why does he need to say that?" Well, if you're quiet on these things, anxiety grows within your country. We're here to protect Canada. We're here to fight for Canada. Some could, some in our country just want us to roll over and do whatever Trump wants to do. No, we're a G7 country. We have a lot at stake here, but so do the Americans. We are their greatest trading partner. No one comes close than Canada. So we have a lot of skin in the game, but so do the Americans. And look, we need to find a way that gets the best deal possible. And there's going to be a lot of noise. So Trump knows that he's going to make the media if he says, "I want to see Canada become the 51st state. I want to buy Greenland." The list goes on and on and on. So yeah, it's a tactic, but you still have to take it seriously because he's the president of the United States. He's the most powerful person in the world. So we have to take everything this man says seriously. If we take it with a grain of salt, we may rule the day that we did that. So for me, I look at our riding, Jake, and I look at Cape Breton in northeastern Nova Scotia, and we have a lot of farming, we have a lot of fishing, we have a lot of pulp and paper, and that's just the top of it. We export so much to the United States. We need to have absolute vigilance on this. And the Canadian government, along with the premiers across the country and business leaders in Canada, are making those calls, having those meetings with different people, like governors of states, like senators of states. I mean, you think of Mitch McConnell's riding in Kentucky, and people might say, "Well, what does the tariffs have to do with Kentucky?" Well, if you look at Kentucky, I mean, their main export is bourbon. Who do they export to? Overwhelmingly, Canada. That impacts jobs in Kentucky. And what we don't want to see happen, and this is, certainly a reality, is that if there is tariffs put on us, we have to fight back. It's absolutely essential. But a we don't want a recession. This could cause a recession. So there's a lot of things. I don't want to worry people to the point, well, there's no hope. There's absolute hope. We'll negotiate, we'll work with, we'll fight for. I think we'll get a deal. But boy, oh boy, Trump's tactics are the same. If you look at his first 4 years and leading into this, it is name calling. We're starting to see that in Canada. Strongman tactics, we're seeing that in Canada. So there's this philosophy in some countries over the last 10 years that if you belittle people, you're going to get results. If you try to tear people down, you're going to get results. You are going to get results, but I would say that they're not the results you want. So I'm focused on so many things in the riding. This is another one where I'm in contact with Dom in terms of my riding, but also in my role in fisheries. Because the men and women of the fisheries have a lot at stake. They have a tremendous amount at stake. But so does everyone else in our riding. So we have to be vigilant. We have to keep calm, but that doesn't mean we roll over. We fight like hell. We fight like hell in terms of letting American senators, congresspeople, business leaders, governors know that if you do this, if you do it for 1 week, the impact is on us, no question, but the impact is on you, United States. So, I mean, I'll be more vocal as we go, but I'm being vocal now because I believe that Canada has a lot at stake, but boy, so do the Americans. So the best deals happen in the boardroom. And so we have ministers that are connected to the American leadership, incoming president, his team. We have the prime minister who's down in Washington now. He's attending Jimmy Carter's funeral, but he's also going to be meeting with key people. So a lot at stake here at this moment in Canada's history. And this one to me is a lot on the line, but we got the right people doing the right work. And this is not a partisan issue, right? And the minute we make it a partisan issue is a real problem because this is an existential problem to Canada and also an existential opportunity for Canada if we swing the right type of deals like we did when Trump came into power the first time. We negotiated. We negotiated. Chrystia Freeland was the lead at the time. We got, I think, what most experts would say is a mutual beneficial deal in terms of CUSMA, which was the free trade agreement. Now we're tasked to doing it the same to get a good deal, because ultimately we're so linked, intricately linked to the American economy, and the economy of the Americans is tied to us. Think of the manufacturing that goes back and forth, or between the United States and Canada, goods and services that travel from just the Gordie Howe Bridge in Windsor to Detroit on a daily basis. We're we are brother and sister, if you want to look at it this way. So we are connected at the hip. So yeah, you know what? This is where leadership comes into play. This is where bumper stickers don't do. This is where talent, skill, tenacity, fighting, resiliency comes into play. And it's at a time for people to put down their partisanship pens, everyone, including liberals, and say, this is a Canada, this is a Canadian issue. This is a North American issue. We need leadership to on all sides of the equation in Canada, between premiers, between the federal government, to work together. And I like our chances when we do that, and I think it's happening. And we'll see more of it. But that's my focus, and I think for the next leader, we talked about it before. Um, I'll be looking at, why do you want to be prime minister? Why do you want to be leader? How do you differentiate yourself from other candidates? What policies do you want to proceed with? What policies do you want to delete? How do you take on what is in essence a very, very right-wing politician that doesn't mind duking it up and tearing people down? And that's just hardball politics. How will you succeed in that? And how and some particular items that I have that I will keep for now with me in terms of questions for each of the leaders as it relates to Cape Breton and northeastern Nova Scotia. What's your commitment to renewable energy? What's your commitment to jobs in renewable energy? What's your commitment to healthcare? We've expanded the amount of money we've put into Nova Scotia, the Nova Scotia provincial government in terms of healthcare. What's your commitment to the private? What's your commitment to public healthcare? What is your commitment to jobs writ large and investing in rural communities? And then there's a few others that I'll be asking. So, and it started last night. I had a conversation with Chrystia Freeland. And I said, I'm going to be asking tough questions because my community, my riding deserves it. And you need to be able to answer them if you're going to be the next Prime Minister of Canada. And I'm going to ask every single leadership candidate those questions as well.
Now, getting back to the tariff or the trade debate, my understanding is that there is a sizable trade deficit between our countries where Canada actually exports more goods to the United States than what it takes in. So if tariffs were imposed and there was some kind of trade war, it would possibly impact the United States even more than us. That's not saying it wouldn't have an impact, especially here where we export so much seafood in Atlantic Canada down to the United States. But it would be kind of a self-inflicted wound on the United States by engaging in such a war, would it not?
100%. And I think too, the way with all due respect to the President of the United States, it's not a tariff war is not what I think he thinks it is. I think what a tariff war would do would impact the end user and businesses on the American side, the consumer on the American side, businesses that require supplies, commodities from Canada, will pay extra for them. They will. And so the reality is that, um, one of the things that the president has said is that he wants to see an increased presence of law enforcement on the Canada-U.S. border. And in the fall economic statement, and a future budget, you will see a tremendous amount of money going to be spent on technology, and law enforcement. But the reality is that if you look at the stats, the number of people that use Canada to get into the United States compared to Mexico is it's not even close, right? So we need to negotiate in good faith, get the best deal we can. They're our trading partner, they're our friend on every level. But sometimes you have disagreements. Sometimes you have major disagreements. Um, but we've been preparing for this um, for many years, in fact, in terms of if Kamala Harris was to get in, this is how do things how do things fall out? What are we prepared to do? If Donald Trump got in, what are we prepared to do? What do we anticipate in terms of a chess match? What's his first, second, and third move, and what's our fourth, fifth, and sixth move? When do we make a move? Who do we need to be talking to? So it's not like he became president and all of a sudden people started working on it. This is a high stakes, real life, impactful game of chess that impacts people directly in their pocketbooks and their livelihoods. So we have to take it seriously. So when people say that's Donald Trump, that's a tactic. It is a tactic. It's one he uses, but also we have to take the leader of the free world seriously on anything that he says. Um, you know, my personal belief is that he gets too much coverage for those off the comment remarks. But another side of me says it's the president of the United States. If the president of the United States during, which he did say, one of the things that we need to look at in terms of COVID is maybe we need to, look at Clorox or putting lights down our body. Well, that's silly and it's asinine, but he said it, right? So my thought on Trump is when he says something, believe it, um, and effectively put strategies in place to negate it or to get a win-win if possible.
Mhm.
But we come from Cape Breton Island, and I think it's a kind of shared in our DNA that we work with those that want to work with us, and sometimes we have to have tough conversations to work with people that may be a little bit more difficult to work with, but we try. But we also don't lay back and let people take a shot at us. You got to be you can in this game. I think Jake, you can be a smart fighter or a careless fighter, and the careless fighter will go into a ring in round one in the first 10 seconds and try to throw haymakers and tire himself out in round two, and he's knocked out. The smart fighter will measure things, will go in with a strategy, will throw some jabs, take some hits, pick his spots to make an impact. That's exactly what we're doing. So um, you can be a good fighter, or you can be a careless fighter, like some folks here in Canada who want us just to capitulate, as was done in 2020. We were told as a government by some key people, on the opposition, you know, kind of just lay back and like let things unfold. You can't do that when you're in a boxing match. You can't do that when you're dealing with people's livelihoods. You can't do that when you're people that have small business are relying on you. You just can't. But if you do, you will get a poorer deal as a result, in my opinion. So I'm telling everyone back home to keep resolute, keep focused on news that actually is news, like your station and other reputable news stations. Don't get caught up in the Facebook world, the social media world. Go to news. Go to conversations like this to learn more about what's happening. But I think with Dominic LeBlanc and his team, I know he is consistently been working with the Americans, and we'll see where we are on the 20th. But it may not be the 20th. It may be like, in March he puts something in place, or it could be on the day that he becomes president. But we'll have tools to effectively respond, and hopefully we can get to a better deal, and I'm confident we will.
Now, you mentioned at those caucus meetings that there were concerns expressed other than this potential trade war or tariffs. But what were those concerns?
I think the concerns are that if you get into a tariff war, it could absolutely cause a recession. And that's problematic for the obvious reasons that everyone watching this would know. And that would impact the entire economy. By the way, a recession impacts funding on social programs because your economic engine pulls the social programs. The better your economic space is, the more you can do to help people on a societal level. So, that's been the backdrop of this. And um, I'm very confident in Prime Minister Trudeau, and that this is like he was so damn good in caucus when talking about this challenge that we have and where his head is at in terms of um, working with Trump, working with the administration to get a strong deal for both. But I think, look, across Canada, there's not one MP or not one constituency that would be immune to a trade war. It would bring a lot of industries to the breaking point at at best, and that is also American businesses, as you said, and American consumers as well. So that is, as a country, we have a lot of opportunities and we face challenges as every decade comes and goes. But this one is certainly problematic because it impacts people's pocketbooks and it impacts people's, business leisures. It impacts jobs. It impacts growth. And so this is something that serious people in our community are following, like serious people in terms of what I mean by that is people that have been following this, serious people like any one of our constituents who are following this. I getting texts and calls from everyone from every walk of life in Cape Breton, northeastern Nova Scotia. So it's a serious situation, requires serious conversations. It requires us to take it seriously. That doesn't mean we throw up our hands, and that doesn't mean that we don't have a game plan. Boy, we have a game plan. But it is a very serious situation. And not one community, not one constituency, not one province won't be impacted by it, but the Americans will as well. So this is where leadership comes to the table. You rise to the occasion or you don't. You could be flippant or you can be serious. You can play politics or you can get serious.
Now, since the Prime Minister announced that he was stepping down as Prime Minister and Liberal leader, you'd mentioned that there are some candidates out there,
Yep.
Christy Clark, Mark Carney, Krista Freeland. Are there others that are stepping forward? And what does the leadership race look like now? If timeline's been set, I assume organization has begun internally within the Liberal Party to start that process of the leadership. So where do things stand right now with that?
Yeah, so for people back home, basically how this works is that you have the government, which is a liberal government, but you also have the Liberal Party, the organization. The organization is going to set the groundwork, the rules of engagement, timelines for the leadership race. I can tell you what I've said. I've said pretty unequivocally it needs to be a short race. By that I mean I would like to see the prime minister, a new prime minister by March 2nd. That gives that individual a full month to the speech of the throne. There's a lot of things at play when you think about that. You think about number one, getting the speech of the throne ready, preparing a budget that I hope is bold in terms of focusing on the importance of businesses and the economy and jobs. That takes some time. So what I've said, and I can only speak for myself, is that a short window, I believe you can have a leadership race in 30 days. I think that's really, really doable. In terms of the names that you mentioned, all of those names I've heard. No one has officially declared. So you have Freeland, Carney, Clark. You have another rumor names of Melanie Joly and Francois Philippe Champagne, and a couple of others. Some folks I know, some folks I don't know, but I know each of their resumes are pretty substantial and a very strong leadership. So it's going to be very interesting. So the party will come back. The party's heard from the caucus, which is the MPs, of what was consensus from the group of MPs. The party then will digest that in the coming days and then present a plan of here's the length of time, here's the way to vote, here's the kind of framework for membership, that kind of thing. But we're in now, it's January 9th. I suspect that news, Jake, will come very, very soon. And then look, I mean, it's bittersweet. The prime minister is leaving. He's provided, I think, quality service, but there's a chapter and there's a life in, there's a shelf life for every politician, and there's a shelf life for every prime minister in particular. And I think that he's definitely set the tone at the caucus to say, united, we need to be focused, we need to provide a moderate centrist option in the next election that doesn't focus on cutting the hell out of programs and really impacting people at a visceral level on an economic scale. But we need to do that. And so the next prime minister will lead us into that. That to me is exciting. That to me comes with a whole host of challenges that I'm looking forward to, tackling head on.
Now, once that leader is chosen, which would be in March, I guess, and takes office and starts operating and functioning as the head of this country, and then we head into the election. I'm assuming, as you said, could be in the spring, could be in the fall.
Yep.
How confident are you that your party is going to be ready for that election, given the fact that most public opinion polls have the Liberals trailing the Conservatives by 20% or more?
Yeah, I think it's look, you can't deny the polls. And I think that, there's variations of polls. We're down 14, we're down 20, we're up in Atlantic Canada, we're down in Atlantic Canada. I'll say this. I think that this is a new game now. I think that there's going to be definitive choices in very short order. Canadians will pay attention in terms of what changes do they actually want. How do they want to see their country in the next 4 years? There's a lot at stake. I think that what we've seen, or what I've seen anecdotally, since the prime minister stepped down, is an increased flow of text, emails, and calls to me directly, in terms of people that were perhaps going to sit out that now know that that's not an option. They want to get involved in the Liberal Party. They want to get involved in a leadership race. They want to get involved in ensuring that we maintain our institutions. They want to get involved to ensure that we don't cut pensions, that we don't cut EI, that we don't cut the fisheries, that we don't abolish ACOA, that we don't put a wrecking ball to the CBC. That's just a few things. So the challenge is great, no question. But there's a lot on the line, and as we get closer to an election, there's going to be a light shine on the new leader, which is the prime minister, and rightly so. But there's also going to be a light on Mr. Poilievre. He's not taking questions from media. He's going to have to at some point. He's going to have to say, you talk about cutting dental care. Are you serious? You talk about cutting pharmacare. Are you serious? What do you plan to put in place? Are you in favor of public health care? Or do you want to privatize it? What is your stance on ACOA? Atlantic Canada Opportunity Agencies that so many people in our region rely on. There are folks in the caucus who have said there needs to be a drastic reduction in their budget. Okay, let's talk about that. Let's have a debate on that. We've talked about this before, Jake. The investments that we've made in green hydrogen in the Strait area don't happen with a right-wing government. It just doesn't happen. They would invest somewhere else, but it wouldn't be there. So there's consequences. And so we need to actually have those debates. We need to have those conversations. And I'm looking forward to having that. To me, this is the fight of my life because I do believe we have two paths to go down. If the Canadian public chooses us, great. If the Canadian public chooses the Conservative Party, then I respect the voters' choice to do that. But it does come, there are ramifications for voting for right-wing governments, and we've seen them. And left-wing governments. That's why I believe in a centrist government. But we'll see how it goes. I'm looking forward to it. We've invested over 527 million this past year in the riding. I think it's a record number for the riding, I do believe. Others can determine if that's factual or not, but I do believe that is the case. We're going to continue to work our tails off and take nothing for granted and help as many people as we can. Because that's what people who go into politics who want to do something do. On the other side of the coin, those that want to be someone, the public can determine who they are.
Now, on the local level, the Conservatives are set to choose their candidate for the new riding, federal riding of Cape Breton-Canso and Ginish. Has the decision been made as to where you will be running in the upcoming federal election?
That would be very soon, but no, I have not heard from the party because the party decides who will run where. Where will Jaime run? Where will I run? And then then each member, myself and Jaime, can make their decisions accordingly in terms of preparing for that election. But we're prepared for that election either way. We're not. I'm not a politician that you only see 4 years. Every 4 years, we're out there hustling, working hard, and ready to take on the Conservative candidate, whether it be in Sydney, Glace Bay, or Cape Breton, Antigonish, Guysborough. I look forward to that. I look forward to that battle. I know some of the folks in the some of the Conservative candidates. I've met them, talked to them. I wish them well because it's really important that people put their name forward on the ballot to provide opposing views. Opposing views on how they see our community evolving and why do they want to be in a leadership role. And that's important. That's necessary in a democracy. But I'm a fighter, and I'm looking forward to that fight. I can assure you that.
Now, Parliament is prorogued until March 24th, but in the meantime, the government has to continue to function. And there seems to be some confusion about that, unless Parliament is sitting, government isn't really doing anything. But
Yeah.
perhaps you can explain that's not the case and why that is not the case.
Yeah, I mean, look, to bring it down to a rudimentary level, yes, the question period committees are not meeting. But government continues to work and focused on individuals. So all departments and ministries are working as they would if Parliament was in session, if question period was a Monday through Friday. I'm still working on trying to secure funds for port development. I'm still focused on massive opportunities for housing in the Strait area and the rest of the riding. I'm looking at how do we become in our riding a bigger player when it comes to the Coast Guard. I'm still meeting with constituents on their issues that are personal to them. We're still accepting proposals for different programs that have been funded from the last budget. So the wheels still go around. Government is still working hard. Opposition leaders are doing and opposition parties are doing what they would have done other than being question period. And committees don't meet. So the Fisheries Committee doesn't meet. So all of that, the easy answer is government continues to rock and roll for the people of Canada and will continue to do so. Then we have a speech from the throne. And then my guess is we'll have a budget. And then it's up to the NDP and Bloc. The new leader will come with, no doubt, new policies, new asks within a budget that I think will be important to be reviewed. The NDP, in particular, but the Bloc, will need a dance partner to continue on a budget. And that's going to be interesting. So there's a lot more intrigue to come on that, right? Because the parties will be meeting, no doubt, over the next 3 months to discuss allegiances or no allegiances, demands, requests. And so I wouldn't rule out there not being election in May, but I wouldn't rule it in either, because it's still a live wire. But we're ready. We're ready. We're ready to rock and roll if there is, and because it's important. It's important for everyone to be ready, because you don't know. In a minority government, a mistake by someone, a party can cause an election. So, Canada's, to me, still the #1 country in the world, and our job is to make it that and consistently take nothing for granted. And there's lots of work to do on a constituency level. There's lots of work to do at a national level. And there's a lot on the line when the election comes, Jake, because like I say, I think that as we get closer to election, people are going to take a much stronger look at their options and ask serious questions. And my question, one of the questions I would ask anybody watching this is, in terms of leaders, who's in it for you? And you may have different answers to that, those that are watching. And who do you trust more? And who do you think is going to be there for you? Those are fundamental questions. But there's many more that are more local too. So looking forward to it. Can't wait. Let's go. I'm ready to rock. I'm ready to roll. Let's get at it.
Yes, and when I was speaking with you at the end of last year, you mentioned that there's going to be some announcements upcoming. We've already had one on January 6th.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that there will be some announcements coming up. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that. What do you anticipate there?
Yeah, I think you'll see some housing announcements. I think you'll see some transit announcements. And then I'm not trying to be cryptic because I'm still in the midst of trying to make this happen, but I'm trying to get something across the finish line that I think would be exceptionally important for the riding in terms of, what's the best way to describe it? A new development.
Well,
I wish I could be more. I wish I could be more clear than that, but I can't because I don't want to damage my my efforts, because there's a competition between different communities. So outside of our riding for this particular thing.
That's understandable. I'm sure the suspense will be broken in short time, so
Yeah.
we probably won't have to wait too much longer. But again, Mike, I appreciate you making time out of your busy schedule to speak with me and our viewers about these important topics. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jake. Take care.
Upgrades are coming to the Breton-Canso Superport Corporation's Mulgrave Marine Terminal. In an announcement that took place on January 20th in Mulgrave, the provincial government confirmed that infrastructure upgrades will enable large turbines to move through the Breton-Canso Superport more safely and efficiently. The project includes the installation of a prefabricated bridge at the Mulgrave Marine Terminal that will make it more accessible to commercial transport routes within the region, the province noted. According to a press release from the province, funding will be used for the installation of a 44-meter steel bridge at the northern end of the terminal, which will provide direct access to Route 344. They noted that the bridge was purchased from Zutphen Construction for $400,000. Joe Brennan, chair of the board of directors of the Strait-of-Canso Superport Corporation, said such investments will contribute to significant economic activity and create much-needed jobs in the Strait region. The province said it is providing $750,000 in funding for capital upgrades to the terminal, including the installation of the bridge. This investment in the Superport supports future wind energy projects, such as the nearby onshore wind farms proposed for Guysborough County, the province added. Guysborough-Tracadie MLA Greg Morrow said the Strait of Canso is a strategic area for wind energy development in the province, and the Superport has a key role to play. He said these upgrades will enable turbine components to be transported to potential project sites more efficiently. The provincial government released its 2025-2026 5-year highway improvement plan on January 21st. The province said it will invest more than $500 million in major highway and road projects, repaving, bridge replacements, capital maintenance, and infrastructure work across Nova Scotia. Work will begin on the Port Hastings intersection, the province said, noting that twinning on Highway 104 from Taylor's Road to Beknedak First Nation will continue. Asphalt projects for 2025-2026 in Richmond County include from the St. Peter's Foreshoe Road to Ferguson Road, on Janvern Harbour Road to McDonald Road, Cedar Drive along the West Bay Road, the Port Royal Road to Route 206 along McCackern Road, and Robbins Road to Bay Street along Veterans Memorial Drive. Gravel road projects in Richmond County for 2025-2026 include Northside Loch Lomond Road to the county line along Hay Cove Road, from the St. Peter's Foreshoe Road to the end of the listing along L'Archevêque Road, and from the St. Peter's Foreshoe Road to Three Rivers Road along Sterling Road. As for the 2025-2026 bridge replacement and rehabilitation projects in Richmond County is McRae's Brook Culvert on the West Bay Road. The Tamarac Education Centre Playground Committee is continuing its effort to rebuild the playground at the Port Hawkesbury School. During the January 7th public meeting of Port Hawkesbury Town Council, Committee Chair Karen McKinnon said the current state of the playground area is pretty sad, as wooden structures that were once on the site were removed about 4 years ago. Once the equipment was removed, McKinnon said there was no plan to replace it and minimal equipment remains. After that, McKinnon said the committee was given $5,000 in seed funding to upgrade the playground, but that was insufficient since most playgrounds cost $150,000 or more. Not only is this a loss for the school and students, McKinnon said the community is losing out as there are no play spaces in that part of the town. This playground is connected to the Port Hawkesbury Community Trail System, and the site hosts track and field competitions, McKinnon noted. With support from the school's administration and staff, the committee chair said the group has two main roles: fundraising and advocacy. To raise money, McKinnon said her group has organized popcorn sales, a road race during the Festival of the Strait, a bingo, a yard sale, a silent auction, a Christmas concert, and multiple 50-50 draws. She said they are also starting a GoFundMe page to get donations from the public and will be hosting a benefit concert at the Sarek Auditorium on April 5th. The committee chair said local businesses and industry have been generous with donations, but those sources of funding have been tapped out. McKinnon said they don't qualify for many types of grants because they don't meet the criteria. In her opinion, McKinnon said they should qualify for capital funding from the Department of Education and Early Childhood Development. McKinnon said the committee has contacted the department, contributed to articles in the local media, and has been active on social media in getting their message out. McKinnon said it's unfair and inequitable that other communities and schools in Nova Scotia have better access to play spaces than the students at Tech and the children who live in that area of Port Hawkesbury. The committee was in regular contact with former Inverness MLA Alan McMaster, who encouraged them to apply for a recreation facilities grant, with the deadline to apply coming on February 14th, McKinnon said, noting that they plan on meeting with the new MLA of Inverness, Kyle McQuarrie. To build a playground, McKinnon said the committee is looking at doing that work in stages, and they have raised $45,000 to start. She said they are planning to build up those funds to continue their work in the coming years. In response to the committee's request, Town Council agreed to provide a letter of support for the committee for its grant application, as well as advocate for the project with organizations, agencies, foundations, and other levels of government. As far as financial support, Port Hawkesbury Mayor Brenda Chisholm-Beaton said that would have to be part of the town's upcoming budget deliberations. According to a press release issued on January 9th, Everyone Fuels successfully completed and submitted the Clean Hydrogen Investment Tax Credit Clean Hydrogen Project Priority Plan for Phase 1 of its Point Tupper Green Ammonia Project to Natural Resources Canada. Upon confirmation, the Point Tupper project is expected to be the first project in Canada to secure the tax credit, confirming eligibility for maximum credit value based on independently validated carbon intensity of clean hydrogen, according to Everyone. Finalizing validated carbon intensity modeling and the submission of the Clean Hydrogen Project Plan will enable the company to access the highest tier of the tax credit, representing 40% of eligible capital expenditures based on a projected carbon intensity of less than 0.75 kilograms of carbon dioxide per kilogram of green hydrogen. These investment tax credits are critical to ensuring that Canada is able to provide the most cost-efficient, greenest hydrogen globally and provides globally competitive cost for early movers that will drive the cost down over time, noted Everyone. The submission leverages a recently completed front-end engineering design study and includes an assessment of the project's expected carbon intensity using the Fuel Life Cycle Assessment Model, the company noted. These key deliverables ensure compliance with stringent regulatory standards for clean hydrogen production, Everyone said, noting that validation of life cycle carbon intensity calculations was achieved in collaboration with RWDI, a world-renowned engineering and environmental consultancy, and calculations conducted by Deloitte Canada, a leader in carbon intensity analysis. The results confirmed that Everyone's project will achieve an industry-leading carbon reduction of over 99% compared to fossil fuel-based hydrogen production. With confirmation of ITC eligibility at 40%, Everyone said it is well positioned to finalize binding offtake agreements and begin construction on its multi-billion-dollar production and transportation facility in 2025. Since 2022, Everyone has invested over $200 million in infrastructure, engineering, and development work at project sites, including Point Tupper. Everyone's capital expenditures for Point Tupper, Phase 1 and Phase 2, are estimated to reach $3.4 billion and $10.3 billion, respectively. Everyone has achieved environmental approval on its renewable energy generating assets in Nova Scotia, including the hydrogen production plant in Point Tupper. In June 2024, Canada achieved royal assent of Bill C-69, the budget implementation legislation that includes investment attraction measures critical to ensuring Canada maintains an edge in the fiercely competitive global clean energy space. These include investment tax credits of up to 40% on eligible clean hydrogen equipment and 15% for clean ammonia infrastructure based on achieving validated and verified carbon intensity reductions. During the Committee of the Whole of Richmond Municipal Council on January 14th in Arishat, Stan Johnson with the Burdor Lake Collaborative Environmental Planning Initiative, or CEPI, gave a presentation.
So we have a second presentation this evening, and for those of you who follow along with your package, it's on page 129 to 157 of your package. So I'd like to welcome Stan Johnson from the Bredor Lakes Collaborative Environmental Planning Initiative, CEPI, regarding the Bredor Lakes CEPI and Bidaba.
All right, what we're talking about here is bidubal, actually. Bidubal in our language, migbam. You say if you put a blanket on the floor and you put a hole in it and you pour water, all that water would pour into an area. That's what the action of bidubal means. It's pouring into one. Basically, like 6,500 years ago when the water levels rose enough that it infilled the Bredor Lake. Before then, it used to be a series of lakes, so now it's just one big lake. And that's what it basically talks about. Now, the bidubal is made up of the municipalities, the municipality councillors from all around Cape Breton, as well as the First Nation councillors. So that's what makes up bidubal. And why bidubal? We do study impacts from sewage, from overflow from treatment plants during like storms and stuff, discharge from recreational boaters, go around the lake, inadequate sewage disposal for some cottages that we would have some worried about, and effects on invasive species. Discharge from recreational boaters. One of the things we did there was because a few years ago, a neighbor of mine came down at Crane Cove right on the water, and there was a slick that came in out on the shore there, and the kids were wondering what it was, and they were saying there's an oil slick, but we had it checked out, and basically one of our directors who was out metal detecting across the lake that Sunday, actually, on the summertime, saw an American yacht move into the McPhee Islands area there. And it was a pretty good-sized yacht, and then they left, and that's that afternoon, that slick shows up. We're figuring they dumped their sewage tanks out into the lake and just pulled off. So that's one of the issues we worked about. There's lots of cottages, actually. There's we worked with a lady named Anna Curtis Steele, who we used to work with on Nova Scotia Environment. And she always told us about this grandfather clause that was in the system now, whereas back in 72, I think, whereas if you kept a part of your cottage up, like a porch or something, you can actually build a house around it and keep your current sewer system, whatever you had, was a straight pipe or whatever. So we had one of our associates at the meeting at Victoria Council last year, and she learned there was over 200 cottages around the lake that have straight pipes going into the lake. And with the discharge from boaters and stuff, like as we all know, oysters are filter feeders, and they clean the lake. But with the MSX disease that has crippled the oyster industry in the Bredor Lake over the last few years, we figured those came from the Lunar Gypsum plant when the ships used to come into the lake, drop their ballast into the lake to get under the bridge and then come back out. And whatever was in their system, we figured it came from Virginia somewhere, was where they had that problem, an MSX problem. So it brought it to the lake. And as we all know now, there's pieces of it in PEI that's starting to bother it now. So it's So the impacts of sewage, oysters, other fishery operations, increased algae growth throughout the lake, health risks to recreational activities, a loss of ecosystem, traditional Mi'kmaq medicines around the lake that we're concerned about as well. So we, what we did was Peterborough took on we installed some pump out stations. We worked with some other groups, and there were 6 pump out stations around the lake. There's only 5 now. I think Dundee used to be one, but I think that's a private operation now, so the marina's no longer there. But these pump out stations around the lake, and that actually when we explored the Bredor in the summertime, those 2 weeks Ocean North worked with us during that time, and they actually pay for the pump out for anybody that wants to do pump outs during that 2-week period. So it's awesome time, and they're great partners of us. We helped Waikagama and Wegolma and the town of Waikagama actually work together on a joint sewage system that Bidubak helped with them a few years ago. Actually, they got their own sewage treatment system that was built through this organization. And right now we're looking at helping with the other organized communities as well, because I think when the Victoria County had their meeting, Bedek actually stopped building homes now because their sewage system is at capacity and they can't really move forward. So those are the kind of issues that we want to look at and help out with. We mapped some coastlines with climate change models. We did some of that work as well. We had a climate change conference in 2013. We held some workshops around the lake as well, and did develop some action plans. Assist some municipalities. We drafted climate action plans as well when we were working at them, those as well. Bottleneck with its Bottleneck water rangers, as we know, Bottleneck had some problem with water over a few years. I think they got it sorted out now, but we helped them with some issues. We did some water balance project, member 2, CBR, and we did a member 2 runoff diversion project with them. So other notable projects, dredging the silt was hampering boat navigation and all that stuff. We helped with that as well. And we've facilitated dialogue between Inverness County and Wamako leading to the Memorandum of Understanding, MOU, that they have between the two communities, which they work on projects together. 2024 and beyond, basically, UINR was our stewards, actually working on some initiatives with our partners. We're doing actually there's a BDUBA meeting on the 24th, which is, it'd be great if one of a councillor here could appoint a member to join BDUBA. We're working on a project with the First Nation, what do they call the municipality, FCM, whatever it's called. Remember that one? Yeah. They're working on a project now. We're actually checking out some watershed mapping around the lake to see how climate change affects and watershed data collection around the lake. That's the thing we're working on. Stakeholder engagement, March 31st. It started last year and will be ending this year. So they've done some work already. They want to show at the next BDUBA meeting actually what they've done so far and how far they're at. And they want to keep working with our communities to work forward. We've did a species at risk project. We call it Maliamu Gimsikoramana. Basically, it's taking care of all the animals or beings around the lake. So we've developed workshops. That happened for 3 years prior to this, and then we have another 3-year extension coming. So I used to have another coordinator that used to work with me now, was running this project. He's been working on that one, so actually moved on ahead. Like I was telling UINR, the Unamagi Data Water Collection Project, that's happening as well. Shoreline erosion control, which we're worried about. As we all know, around the lake, a lot of cottages, like the storms that are hitting the lake, are pretty bad these days. Like we don't have ice on the lake anymore like we used to. I can remember 20 years ago, we used to have snowmobile races on the lake, cars were on the ice. And like now, you can hardly go ice fishing now to go find ice around anymore. So we're looking at all the stuff like that, like Maligawach. We had the graveyard there that was pretty washed into the water a few years ago. They put some rocks there to sort of that emergency preparation, try to help it out. But over the years, so what happened was, as you all know, when you arbor a piece of shoreline, the deflection hits the adjacent area. So right now, like I had a cottage it was about 200 feet from where the graveyard was. I had about 30 feet of grass, had 2 trees, was a road, another piece of grass, and there was the shoreline. It was about 70 feet to the water where my cottage was. I gave away my cottage a couple of years ago. My cottage was 2 feet over the bank because of all the action coming off the rock wall down there. I went to go look at it this year, and where my cottage was, I had an outhouse out back, say maybe 20 feet behind the cabin. I went there this year. My outhouse is, again, near the water. That's how far it's gone, like, from then. So one of the things we look at is how can we mitigate this kind of stuff? Like, even Bottleneck there the graves are washing out at the island there. So how do we work with this? Like, we've gone to some areas out in Iona as well that they showed us some areas where it's getting bad. And how do we work on these? So we've got some ideas on how to do it, but we'll be bringing that kind of stuff towards at the end of this year. So, like, BDUBA basically works with all of us, and we aim to combine, like Ron was saying, like 2IC and basically work with our both organizations. How can we develop Western science and our traditional knowledge from being here so long? How can we work with these areas and all the project problems that we have to find a common solution for everybody, right? So it's great. It's a great organization and great people on it as well. And we've done some good work. And we just want to keep it forward and let everybody know that it's sort of, people always get confused with what SEPI and BDUBA does, but they're totally two different groups. So.
Thank you very much. That was great. I've heard some of the presentations before in previous council sessions, but it's been really informative.
Thank you for watching. Please tune in again to find out what we will be talking about on The Record.